Thank you for joining us. Let's get into other conversations now. Reactions have continued to trail the federal government's announcement that it has secured 800 million US dollars World Bank facility for fuel subsidy removal palliatives to be disbursed through cash transfers to about 50 million Nigerians who belong to the most vulnerable category of society. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed, while explaining why subsidy must be removed, noted that subsidy has cost the country 250 billion naira monthly, with the conservative estimate putting the cost of subsidy to the country over the years at 3 trillion naira. So let's make sense of this issue now. Nelson Ekujumi, Policy and Public Affairs Analyst, joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us. It's good to have you again.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning to our viewers.
Yeah. So I know quite a lot of reactions have been, trailing these 800 million, million dollar palliatives that have been budgeted for palliatives, subsidy palliatives. So talk to us, how much of this money provided by the World Bank do you think will be allocated to cash transfer programs, and how do you think the fund will be distributed to eligible beneficiaries, knowing full well that we do not have metrics in identifying these 50 million vulnerable Nigerians? What's your position on this?
I didn't hear you. I didn't get your last line. I got you from the beginning. Please, can you come again?
Okay, so I was saying that how do you think these will be distributed, will be allocated? I mean, given the fact that we do not have, the government has not told us the metrics they are going to use, the yardstick or the condition they are going to use to distribute these 800 million US dollars to 50 million vulnerable Nigerians. So because a lot of people are asking, what metrics would they use, to identify these vulnerable Nigerians? That's one. The second thing is that how come the government is using this approach, saying they are going to do a cash transfer of 5,000 naira to 50 million Nigerians? And if you look at the plan is that this money will be gone in 6 months time. It will cover just for 6 months alone. So what happened after 6 months? But I think we need to start from what's your position on that?
Well, thank you very much. The truth of the matter is that we recognize that the government has a social investment program already in place, through which it has distributed monies in various categories to the vulnerable in the society. So as a people, what we need to do is to look at that mechanism and see if that mechanism has really addressed the purpose for which it was set up. Because as I speak to you, I'm also one of the stakeholders who have investigated the system. And I've been, my organization has been partnering with the Lagos State Office of the Social Investment Program. The data was collected by the federal government via the states. So the program is domesticated at the various 36 state governments and the federal capital territory, Abuja. So what we need to do right now with regards to this $800 million facility from the World Bank, because that facility has been earmarked for a particular purpose, is for us to see, for us to interrogate and ensure that the mechanism through which it will be transferred that is already in place is for us to interrogate it and check whether any abuses have taken place. And if there are none, we need to plug all loopholes and ensure that the purpose for which this money is earmarked is achieved. Then secondly, you talked about the program will be on for 6 months. Well, it is expected that when you put up a policy, that there's usually the teething period, like a baby, when a baby is going to teeth. So as the program goes on for the next 6 months, it is expected that other measures will come in place via the federal, state, and local governments, as the years roll by. Because definitely, that if the subsidy is removed, the price of fuel will go up, the cost of living will also escalate. It is expected that governments at the various tiers of government in Nigeria will put in place measures that will address, the economic hardship of the vulnerable in the society. So it is not just that we are sitting down and waiting for the $800 million from the World Bank, and after 6 months we are back to square zero. No, government has a responsibility, to take care of every segment of the society, because, like we say in our local parlance, all fingers are not equal. So you definitely expect that, public services will be rolled out, and those public services will be services that, will be targeted majorly at the vulnerable in the society.
I mean, if you look at this particular facility, $800 million US, and like you said, of course, there will be other measures, but maybe after 6 months. But the question people are asking, and what they would like to know, is that why is the government, using this approach of cash transfer and mass transit? But let's dwell a bit on cash transfer, because at the end of the day, 5,000 naira can be spent at one sitting, can be spent just in 2 days, especially with the locals and those who are referred to as vulnerable, category of Nigerian society. So are there no other better options or approach that the government can deploy such that it can be sustainable, the impact can be sustainable beyond just 6 month period? What's your opinion about it? Because that's the question people are asking.
Well, in as much as I recognize the different opinion on this issue, because like we always say, this is a democracy and we are all stakeholders in it. We must recognize that before this grant was, achieved, the Nigerian government officials, as well as the officials of the World Bank, must have sat down together and, crossed their T's and dotted their I's. They must have considered a lot of indices. It is not that the federal government just went to World Bank and said, "Oh, give us $800 million, to cushion the effect of the subsidy on the vulnerable in the society." Both parties must have sat down. They must have looked at a lot of indices, and in looking at all these indices, they now arrived at this conclusion. Don't forget the reason why the $800 million is being approved from the World Bank is that it has been earmarked for distribution to the vulnerable at the rate of, say, 50 million Nigerians. And they must have looked at those indices for them to have arrived at, okay, this has passed, because the World Bank has a template. The World Bank has a standard. And if you don't meet that standard that the World Bank requires, you cannot get access to their facility. It means the measure or the policy that the Nigerian government brought to the table of the World Bank passed, their integrity test. And that was why this money was approved. So going forward, whatever other options we have as citizens, what other ideas we have that we can use to address the problems of those who are most vulnerable in the society. Because when they are talking about 5,000 naira, it's not meant for you and I. We are not in that category. And the indices that was used to arrive at that category was also a World Bank, World Bank standard. What is how many people are in your home, or what type of accommodation do you inhabit, what is your minimum cost of feeding in a day, and other factors. So for the World Bank to have agreed, to grant Nigeria this $800 million, it means the Nigerian, authorities, template has passed the integrity test, has passed the benchmark of the World Bank before it was approved. So going forward, we all know that this $800 million is not for eternity, it's for a fixed period of time. It is for us as citizens, as Nigerians, to interrogate our government, and, exchange ideas that, look, our government at various levels have a responsibility to the citizen. How do we ensure that, other palliatives other measures are put in place to address, shortcomings, that will affect the most vulnerable majorly.
Let's talk about the issue of dead body. This, of course, according to some analysts like you have also talked about the fact that will add up to the dead burden. The current dead burden on Nigeria is huge, around 42 or 46 trillion still ongoing, and that's exclusive of the 23.7 trillion ways and means by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So, are you also concerned about the kind of thing that this will have on Nigeria, given the fact that this will be spread across 25 years before they can pay? It only takes 6 months to spend this money, but again, Nigeria is going to be bearing the cost for 25 years. In the next 25 years, Nigeria is still going to be paying. So, how concerned are you about this?
Well, as an economist and a social, engineer, you must recognize that, the effects of government policy on humanity cannot be measured in naira and kobo. The security implication of not taking care of the vulnerable cannot be measured. The economic implication cannot be measured, in monetary terms. So, if we are going to do this to keep our people alive for the next 6 months before before we come up with other policies to sustain their existence, I don't think 25 years will be enough to measure that. So for me, if this policy is addressed towards mitigating the conditions of the most vulnerable in the Nigerian society, I'm all well and good with it. So long as it is not going to one man's pocket, so long as it is not going to a particular sector of the society who are going to, filter it away. Since this money will be going down, into the pockets of Nigerians to enhance their living in one way or the other, to help their condition. I don't think I will be looking at the number of years it will take or the debt burden it will accumulate, because you can imagine a home where the parents cannot feed their children, where they don't have this type of facility. If such persons take to crime, you can imagine the amount of money we have invested in security over the years. I'm sure this $800 million does not in any way compare to our budget, to our security budgetary allocation on a yearly basis, for the 3 tiers of government. So the fear about, adding to our debt burden is not among the consideration I'm thinking about as a Nigerian. Rather, I'm looking at the overall economic, social, and and the security implication on the society at large.
Okay, let's talk about whether the government will collaborate with private sector companies to improve the quality and availability of public transportation, and if so, how would this partnership be structured and managed in your own opinion? Because they also talk about mass transit. Now we just talked about one part of it is that there will be cash transfer, but again the mass transit is how we do not know how it's going to go. In your own opinion, how would this go? Will the government partner with private sector operators? Will the government buy buses on the road and start fueling it, or is it about subsidizing the payment, the transport cost? So what's your opinion about this?
My opinion is that based on historical antecedents in managing public facility, we have recognized that government at every level have failed to efficiently and effectively manage public utilities, and that is why I'm at home with involving the private sector to create jobs, to create wealth. And what do I mean by this? You look at, I recollect that as a young boy in Lagos, we had the Lagos State Mass Transit Scheme, LSTC. Is down there, is no more in existence. You also recollect at a point in time, we had the Labour Transit. That is a labor organization that did not belong to the government. Where are they today? It has gone comatose. There was the Nigerian Airways. Where's the Nigerian Airways today? Public servants, destroyed it. The Nigerian National Shipping Line, NNSL, it was declared bankrupt, and some of the ships were seized by creditors through court orders, overseas. what, so for me, I will ascribe to what is presently going on in Lagos State. For example, we have the mass transit system that is being run by private sector, and there's government intervention in it, in which government provides, the collateral for them to be able to access these funds. And this private interests are the ones solely responsible. So they are there for business. So if government knows that it wants to participate in the mass transportation system, it is for the government to put in place the necessary infrastructure. We talk of the land bus or the BRT. There's the BRT corridor, that the government has put in place. It is run by the corridor is provided by the government. Those are the type of facilities we are talking about. The government can provide the bank guarantees for them to be able to access, loans from the banks. But for government to wholeheartedly or 100% invest in mass transit, I'm a no for that, because based on our past experience, and like we say, experience is the best teacher. And in view of our history, it is not advisable that the government should be fully involved. The government should be partially involved, but private investors should be encouraged to come in, and run the system so that we can keep it going.
Okay. All right. I think we'll just have to leave it there. It's a conversation that we'll continue to prosecute on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Nelson Epujumi is a policy and public affairs analyst joining us on the show today. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Yeah. You've been watching Business Breakfast. We're broadcasting live from us today. So still to come after the break. Brent crude futures lost 80 cents. That's about 0.96%. Trading at $82.32 a barrel. Well, we'll bring you details and more after this break. Please stay with us.